There we go. Welcome to our very first Raise.dev stream. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. Let's see and make sure, given this is our first one, that you can all hear me and everything is great. Wonderful. So this is our very first stream to the channel, brand new channel. For those of you who have been following along on Twitter, Raise.dev launched this week, and we are super excited to tell you about everything we have going on at Raise.dev and what Raise.dev is all about. So I'm going to be bringing on the founder of Raise.dev to tell you a little bit about that and to answer your questions. We're going to be chatting here for about an hour about what Raise.dev is and what we hope to do and what we can offer you all and help you get the next step up in your career. So if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. We will be keeping an eye out on those questions, and we'll jump in and answer them as we get to it. So with no further ado, let me add to the stream John Brennan. Please welcome John Brennan, everyone. So John, as I mentioned, is the founder of Raise.dev. John, do you want to tell folks a little bit about yourself and I guess when Raise.dev started and where you came from to do this thing?
Yeah, sure. So my name is John Britton. I'm a software developer. I've been a developer for quite a while. I first got into software when I was, in second grade. I got a PC and started hacking away at that. Raise.dev is here to help developers advance their careers. Our mission is to help every developer advance their career. And we're starting by focusing on helping early career developers make a jump and get into their first jobs. So our kind of core principles are around real world experience and hands-on training. Rather than kind of curriculum or like schooling. Right. We're really focused on getting people into the as close to the reality as possible, if not actually doing the reality. Initially, we started the company. I actually just had this idea to take on an apprentice. I thought it'd be really cool to have a developer join me and just work on some side projects. I could maybe help them, get some more skills. And I was really surprised when I made the offer that we had 500 people apply for the position in a week, and I just knew that there was a really big demand.
Right.
I know a lot of people, really wanted to participate. It was impossible for me to scale, myself to so many people. So that was where the idea for Raise.dev came to be.
I was giggling there because I remember when you put that application up and you're like, yeah, I'm going to hire one person to work on some side projects. And then like a month went by and the next time I spoke to you, you were like, oh yeah, I hired like 5 people.
Yeah. So the original idea was just to hire one person for a year. And so my commitment was, okay, let me step back for a second.
Sure.
I have this opinion about every product that I build that I want it to sound too good to be true.
Right.
So when I put the apprenticeship up, I basically said, come work with me. You'll get to use all these great technologies, the latest and greatest cool stuff. There will be no deadlines, no pressure to ship. It'll all be focused on learning. And after the whole thing is over, I'm going to help you get a better job. Oh, and by the way, you're going to get paid, and you're going to get paid pretty well. And so, that's why so many people signed up. It sounded like it was an impossible, opportunity, but we made it happen. The original goal was one person for 4 years, but what we ended up doing was, or one person for 1 year, but we ended up doing was 4 people for 3 months. So it's like, it's the same amount of like commitment. It's just like parallels, right? Like 4 threads at once.
Yeah.
So
very good. That's awesome. So that's obviously where it came from and how you started doing it. What have we just launched? What is it that people can participate in? What is it that's available for them right now?
So what we started with was this idea that like we'll create some apprenticeships and give people the opportunity to have a real job so they can get experience. Because the whole kind of like premise of this early career developer thing is that there's this really big problem with getting your first job that every employer wants to see your experience before they hire you.
Right.
But you can't get experience without getting hired first. So the easy solution to that problem is just give people jobs. And so that's what we tried at the beginning. And that's great, but it's not really sustainable. It doesn't really scale. And so what we've done with Raise.dev is we're entering into an early access period where we're giving public access for free to the platform for developers. What happens is developer comes in, and there are some requirements. There's some criteria to be in. We're not teaching people how to code from scratch, right? There's tons of great resources out there for that. But if you know how to code already, you're highly motivated, and there's a way that we can help you, we will. And so we bring those people in, and we match them with expert coaches. So these are people who have jobs in industry and got lucky at some point in their career. Somebody gave them a big break, and they want to give back and help. And so our coaches, we match them with the developers, and those those pairings will basically work together on a project over the course of anywhere from 12 weeks to a year. Maybe it's a few projects over a time. Maybe you work with a couple different coaches, but the idea being that you get some hands-on experience, you get to ship some things, and then ultimately we're going to try to help you get that first job.
Of course.
That's not to say that we're only focused on people who've never had a dev job, but our primary focus right now is people who want to get into that first job, and also experienced developers who want to help people get into the first job.
Right.
In the future, I can see us doing additional kind of programs around advancing your career, learning new technologies, getting into open source. But right now, the main focus is like the early career devs and getting that first job.
Awesome. Cool. So I have a whole heap of questions. So first of all, just a reminder, folks, if you're there in the chat, and thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them in. We'll get to those. So first of all, John, so you mentioned that people applying should be developers already, and that we're not looking to be another resource in that kind of like starting from scratch. What kind of experience level is like being a developer already? Like where should people be looking to be in their skills and in their careers when they take on Raise.dev?
So I always coach people to call themselves a developer if that's their end goal. You'll notice I will very rarely, if probably never, say junior developer. I don't encourage people to use that term. I'll always say like early career developer. If you're a developer, for me, it's you've put in some effort already to learn some programming language, right? Like you have to be able to write a little bit of code, and maybe you've done some side projects, maybe you've done some tutorials, but really before you get paired with a coach, the thing that we expect is that you are comfortable in your development environment, writing a little bit of code. That doesn't mean you don't need a job, you don't need a past experience in a role as a developer. But really, like if you're saying, I want to become a developer and I've never written a line of code, like you should check out all the great resources out there. There's like edX, Coursera, Udacity. You can check out things like Codecademy, etc.
Okay, awesome. Okay, cool.
But I do want to add to that just because you're not ready to have a coach doesn't mean that you're not welcome. I'm happy to have anybody who's on the path of becoming a developer, join the platform, get to know us, and we'll help you however we can. If that's referring you to resources, that's also fine. And when you're ready for a coach, we're happy to match you.
Cool, awesome.
It's less about saying you're not a fit, but more about saying, is it time? So we'll help you get to the next step.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, that makes sense. Like in order to get the most in the program, you need some foundational skills that you can build upon. So I guess like in a big part when you're talking face to face with a coach, a lot of like where that initial kind of early experience and early comfort of a bit of a programming language will come from is going to be like shared language as well, right? Like just being able to actually express the problems you're having in order to get help with them. Cool. So we mentioned that it's like open and early access and they can sign up today. What can they expect from the welcome session? Like if I sign up today and I get booked in with my kickoff call, like what does that who am I going to meet? What's going to happen?
Yeah. So the way that it's working right now, if you go to the website and you sign up to join, you'll be presented with the opportunity to book a kickoff session with your coach. There's no application process right now. Depending on how demand goes, if we get a lot of demand, we might have to like put in some kind of a buffer delay to deal with capacity. But right now things are open. We're happy to have people come in, and we're just going straight into booking to meet with the coach. You'll either meet with me personally, or you'll meet with another one of our coaches on staff. And your session will be about two main areas. One is to get an idea of your background and like kind of where you're at as a developer, so that we can properly match you. And then the second is on the on your like aspirations. What's your goal? And so we'll talk about things at first, like what have you done to date as a developer? Why are you motivated to become a developer? What is giving you trouble? Like where are you having a hard time right now? We'll talk about like your job search so far. If you've already started looking for jobs, what's your feedback been? In my career, when I first got into being a software engineer, I was living in New York City trying to get a job, and I applied for like 30 or more software developer jobs and was getting turned down over and over at the technical screening stage because I didn't have enough experience. and trying to understand why, like what's the thing that you're lacking or need to work on, so that we can more appropriately match you with a coach. And then the second component is your goal. And Raise.dev is very goal and career oriented. I've spent most of my career in the developer, or in the cross section between developer and education. Right. And for a lot of my career, like I always looked at education as something that was, for my own benefit. Like I love to learn, and don't get me wrong. Like if you love learning, like by all means you should be doing it. But when we were starting to put together Raise.dev, the idea was, let's build something that's focused on the career. And at the end of the day, everything that we do is about helping you advance in your career. And so we want to know what your career goals are. Right. So we'll talk about things like, what kind of a developer do you want to be? Is there a particular industry that you want to be in? I have an opinion about being a software developer that, developers in some ways can be looked at by corporations or by like just society in general as kind of like this interchangeable cog, right? It's like, oh, I just need 5 developers to build me this new app. And then, step 3 is profit, right? Like, right. But the reality is, if you want to be successful in your career as a developer, you have to be differentiated. You have to stand out. And the way that I like to think about that is, how can you take the skill of being a developer and interleave that with some other different industry or some other expertise so that you are unique? And so in my case, my developer career has always been the cross section between developer and education. But in our conversation, in your kickoff calls, you can expect to talk about, like, what are your passions? What things outside of software development do you like to do? Are there particular industries that you want to be in? Say for example, you have an interest in medical, or maybe you're transitioning careers and you have past experience in another field. How can that complement your skills as a developer to make you a unique and strong candidate in the future, and hopefully help you advance your career into something? So those are the main things that we'll talk about in those kickoffs. And the kickoffs close with the expectation of matching you to a longer term coach. So I was just doing a kickoff last night. I met with a developer in New York City and a coach based out in California. Both of them really awesome individuals. We connected them together, and then now what they're doing is every 2 weeks they're doing a sprint where they're working on a project together, and they're catching up with each other via chat and via
That's awesome.
Synchronous meetings, like on a pretty regular basis.
Getting the asynchronous meeting points. We have a question relevant to that in a bit, which we'll come to. So you mentioned, I want to kind of take a detour at the moment, because you mentioned that people come to some different backgrounds, and that can be a huge asset in their future job search as they add those developer skills to that. I think it'd be a good time to go back and kind of talk about the pilot a little bit. We speak about the pilot in the blog, and you've already mentioned the folks you hired. I'd love to hear a little bit about like where those folks came from and where they ended up at the end of the program, and how that went, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. The pilot was amazing. I had high hopes for it, but I didn't have high expectations. I was like, this is an experiment. Let's just try it out and see how it goes. As you know, from our past work at other companies, I have a tendency to create an idea, like a value proposition, and then launch it without having.
Maybe we get time in the stream, I'll talk about how I came to be at GitHub Education and what I ended up being hired on, and what the state of it was when I joined. We'll get to that.
But I didn't know what was going to happen with the pilot. But what we did, we brought in those 4 developers. I kind of told them, hey, this is an experiment. You're getting paid for the next 3 months, and after 3 months, the money might run out. So we have to find a way to make this sustainable. And we just got lucky. I think like a lot of things like kind of came together at the right times. We found really great people. The one most important thing for the candidates was that they're motivated. Like kind of the screening criteria for the pilot was just like, look for highly motivated individuals and people who are going to work really hard and take the most advantage of the opportunity that we're giving them. It's not every day that people with 10, 15 years of experience are saying, I'm going to work with you all the time to help you advance your career. And so it's really important that the developers coming in are motivated and want to take full advantage of that. So in terms of their backgrounds, we had developers coming from all different backgrounds. We had people from kind of the design industry. We had somebody who worked in environmental engineering previously. We had somebody who was relatively recently out of college and didn't have a whole ton of work in the industry, but mostly worked in like IT. And we had different things. And then During the pilot program, we got lucky, like I said, and we found a few customers that were interested in hiring, early career developers and wanted to try it out. And so we found a way to make the pilot self-sustaining, and so that we had some revenue coming in that was paying for the developers' time.
Right.
And it took about a year, I'd say, before we wrapped up the pilot entirely.
Right.
And in that year, we had people. We brought on more developers, not just the initial 4, but brought on other developers into the pilot program as well. And they all ended up getting job offers. And so that was like our stated goal from the beginning, was help them get a job offer at a real company, being a real developer, like a full-time developer job, not like, an IT help desk job, like being a software developer. And so they all got job offers. On average, it took about 6 months from starting the program to get into a job offer. We had some people who were as quick as 2 months, and we had some people who took as long as 10 months. So it really varied. It also varied based off of their level of availability and commitment. During the pilot, everybody was full-time on the program, and I expect that with our new kind of platform model where we're matching people up, there'll be a lot more part-time involvement, which will make it more accessible. But after about 6 months on average, people moved into full-time roles. The thing that happened during the program that I was really interested in, that was like the most valuable, was lots and lots of hands-on learning. We did this thing where anytime something was unclear or a developer was asking a question, we'd kind of like stop everybody and focus them on that particular problem and try to explain it in as much detail as we could, break it down. And like when we didn't know, when the coaches were unsure what was happening, we had to go find resources, and we learned on the job as well. It wasn't just we're the great all-knowing people that are going to teach you everything. It's actually
we'll come back to this in a moment as well.
This is something I say to people all the time: is being a developer isn't about knowing how to code. Like, that's just as much as like being an author isn't about knowing how to write words. Right? It's like it's not that. It's how to be a great storyteller. Right? Like, you don't just become an amazing author because you know how to write. And the same thing is true about software. It's like, writing code is the literacy level of a software developer, but you actually have to know how to solve creative problems. And I always say it like this: it's like, if we knew how to solve the problem, it'd already be solved. So when you come into work every day as a developer, you have to be prepared for the fact that you're going to be trying to solve something that like you don't know how to solve. Every single day is like, what am I going to do? This thing doesn't work the way I want it to work. I have to figure it out. It's not
that's
like,
definitely every single day in my experience.
It's not just like, let me like write these like codes down and now it works. It's like, what am I actually trying to achieve? You have to design the system. And so it's the idea of like just-in-time learning. And the developers who, even the coaches, they don't know the answers to everything, but they've just got they've become really good at this skill of just-in-time learning of, I have an idea in my head for an architecture of how I want this thing to work. And they're able to identify that missing piece of what's the knowledge gap I have, how does this thing work? How has somebody solved this problem before? And then go out and look for it and find the answer or create an innovative like new solution themselves. And so, the going back to the point, like if it was already solved, we would like, if we knew how to solve it, it'd be done. Right. Like, the reason we have work as developers, like why there's something that they're going to hire you for and you're going to spend your days working on it, is because you're always solving new problems. So we had this thing where people were always solving new problems, and we'd get together and kind of break them down and talk about it. And I think in the Raise That Dev program, working with your coach, this is the same kind of experience that you're going to have. You're going to have your coach who may not know the solution to the problem. Like I said, last night I kicked off a coaching pairing with with 2 developers, and the developer who was signing up for the coaching wanted to get into mobile development. And the coach had never done mobile development, was like thrilled about the idea of working on a mobile project, with the developer and helping them learn it, so they could learn some stuff on the while they're working too. So
amazing. Okay, cool. So
I hope I'm not getting too long-winded for you.
No, so you might all see me writing stuff down. This is me trying to think of. This is me catching on to points without interrupting you and then flying away.
Cool.
So I want to go back a little bit to. You were talking about like the coaches, like the call you had last night with the coach in California, which I think is really interesting. Like, what kind of people are coaches in the program? Like, when I sign up for the program, who can I expect to be pairing with? Like, what are their skills? Where do they come from?
So I think the coaches, they're, by definition, they're software developers, and they're experienced.
Right.
I think kind of a minimum bar for entry as a coach is a few years of experience in the field, because what we're trying to do is get the developers exposure to things that they wouldn't find, in their curriculum at school or doing a tutorial online. It's the reality of being on a real team. So, we're really looking for in our coaches people who have on-the-job experience. I think that you can expect that most of our coaches will have a full-time job outside of being a coach. They work at tech startups. They work at big corporations. There's all kinds of backgrounds. You can also expect that they don't know everything, and I think that it's really important that that the coaches are humble. They're not trying to be somebody who is all knowing and like looking over you. They're just like you. They want to be learning, and they want to be helping you learn. So in terms of like technologies, we have coaches who have experience with all different technologies, from web development to mobile to gaming to, there's all different types of development. So really it's a wide range, data science, those types of things. So other things that you'll probably notice about the coaches is that they have an internal passion for teaching. They might have been involved in past projects where they were running a meetup or doing office hours, or maybe they've mentored before. I personally interview all the coaches who join the platform, and that's one of the things that I talk to them about a lot is like, can you give me an example of a time when you helped somebody as a mentor? And they talk about what they were doing, and they all have a real passion for that. So it's really nice that you can come and ask for help, and you never really feel like a burden on the coach. I know when I was first getting into software development, there were a bunch of people that knew a lot more than me that I was around, and I would go to them and ask them for help all the time. And like in the beginning, they were happy to do it, but as time wore on, they were like, "This guy John, every time I answer his question, he comes back with like 5 more, and it gets really annoying." And so that's like not the case with the coaches. They want you to come back with as many questions as you can all the time.
Perfect. Awesome. So a little, we just got asked a question that kind of comes on the back of this. Do all the coaches who are coaching with Raised Dev, like, are they all doing it full time? Is there other ways to coach? Can you, if you do have a full-time job and you're looking to do some coaching on the side, is that something that Raised.dev supports?
Yeah. So we have kind of 2 pathways for coaches right now. One is that we have some full-time positions where it's more than just coaching. It's a full-time position with Raised.dev, working on the team as a coach, but also being involved in building the product and helping to drive the direction of the company. In the long term, so one of the things about the sustainability of the company from the pilot was like all of the developers in the pilot were employed by us, and all of the coaches from the pilot were employed by us, and everybody was paid. And as we talked about in the announcement, like, that's a perfect solution if you can make the economics of it work. But it's almost impossible to make the funding for that work in the long term with a large number of people. So we're moving to a model where effectively the developers can come in, and the developers will not be paid. It's to be determined whether or not there will be a cost for using Raised.dev in the future. I don't want to commit that it's going to be free forever, but during early access, it's free, and we're trying to figure out what the business model will be. And then on the coaching side, we're also moving to a world where, I've seen tons of interest from developers who have experience. They're like, I wish something like this existed when I was getting started, and they want to lend a hand. And so what we're going to do is build into the platform a way for people to, join and, in part-time on the side while they have a normal job, be able to match with somebody and coach. And I take a lot of inspiration for this from a network that I really love and was like super instrumental to my character, which is Couchsurfing. I don't know if you've heard of Couchsurfing before, Joe.
I've heard this story many times from you. But please tell the audience. I'm sure they will love to.
I know. So Couchsurfing, if you haven't heard of it before, is a website where you can post a profile and essentially say that you'd like to, meet people who are traveling through your town or city or your region, and that you'd like to be a host for them. You'd be happy to have them sleep on your couch or stay in your spare bedroom.
Right.
And that can come off as really strange to a lot of people. Like, why would I let a complete stranger, into my house and stay? But when I was in university,
I got Airbnb. We know.
Yeah. Well, Airbnb. Let's don't get me started on Airbnb. It's a totally different story. But when I was in college and I got into traveling, I was totally broke and I wanted to travel and I needed a place to stay. So I went on this couch surfing website and I learned pretty quickly that it wasn't about getting a free place to stay.
Right.
That's kind of like the hook that gets you in. It's like, oh yeah, I can travel for free. But what's really the value is that you meet these really awesome people, interesting people from all over the world that are just experts in their local culture and in their region. And they just want to welcome you and show you around. And so I got really into couch surfing and I traveled for, many months across Europe. I've stayed with more than 100 different hosts on couch surfing. When I got married at our wedding, a good number of the guests who came to our wedding were people that we knew from the traveling and from couch surfing. And so all of this to say that I'm sort of inspired by that kind of network model with what I want to build with Raise.dev. The idea being that there's tons of people out there that want to give back and help developers level up, but there's not an easy way to get connected with them.
Right.
It's not something that we do. I know many people who have mentors.
Right.
But there's not a standardized way to go out and say, I want to get a developer mentor and work with them, and this is what's going to happen. And I want to make Raise.dev into something where, if you're interested in that as an experienced developer, you can kind of, make a profile and share your experience and then get matched with a few developers and help them out. And so to answer the original question though about do we have opportunities? Of course, we definitely have opportunities. We're looking for people to join as coaches. The best way to get started right now is, we're just entering early access. There's no sign up on the site for people to become coaches, but you can go on the site. We have our contact information in the footer. It's just contact@raise.dev. You can send us an email, tell us you're interested. And I've been chatting with a lot of people who are doing just that and saying that they want to volunteer to become coaches. Besides that, I would say that we're also hiring, more broadly. If this mission speaks to you, and you're really interested in working on this kind of thing and you want to do it as a full-time job, shoot us an email, tell us about yourself and what you'd like to do. We don't have particular job roles posted right now for we're hiring for XYZ. I would just say that the main hiring criteria we have for the company for full-time roles is that people are just very, very passionate about helping developers advance their career.
For sure. Okay, awesome. Great. So we've got some folks in chat who are writing into us at contact@raise.dev for some issues they've had. If you've already used Raise.dev, thank you very much, and we will get back to you as soon as we can if you have those issues. Cool. That answered Jason and Avi's questions. We had another question earlier on. So we've spoken about what join the program is like and what your kickoff call is like, and come kind of through to our goals with what that mentor relationship with the coach is. What is the end outcome? So what happens when I complete the program? What can I expect that to look like? What does completion mean in the context of coaching?
Yeah. So I think that the minimum kind of commitment for a dev doing the program is to see one project through.
Right.
So we'll pair you with a coach and you'll have a project. That project will either be something that you bring, something in open source, or something that we give to you if you ask for us to give you a project. Right. And really, I would think about it as sessions, right? Like a coaching session or a coaching engagement where you see through the project to the end.
Right.
That could be a couple weeks, a couple months, but the end will be, when you feel comfortable that project is done, when you and your coach feel that you've achieved the thing that you wanted to achieve. And then I don't think that there's an exit from Raise.dev. I don't think that you just complete your thing and okay,
there's not a time where we say we're done with you, please leave.
Exactly. I think what we're trying to do is build a relationship where we're helping you for the rest of your career. So the folks that came in from the pilot, we helped them get their first jobs. And I've actually already had some folks that participated in the first pilot and then got their first job and then were in those jobs for more than a year. Mm-hmm. And then they came back to me and said, "Hey, John, I think I'm ready for a change." Mm-hmm. And I talked to them and we talked about strategy. And I think that this is something that we would expect you to do with our coaches in the future, where you say okay, I think it might be time for me to change a job. I help them find opportunities. I help them evaluate different offers, and then ultimately we also help them negotiate their salary.
Right.
And so the first time that they got a job,
the hardest bit of any job. Like,
it's I'm going to stop and just give some advice right now. If you're in the job search and you're considering opportunities, you should get your answer when when a recruiter or when a hiring manager offers you a job. You should have your answer prepared in advance. That answer should be something along the lines of, "Thank you for the offer. I'm going to look at it in detail and consider in terms of compare it against market rate for total compensation," or something to that effect, where it's you're not committing to anything on the spot. You have time to go think about it on your own. And then when you come to negotiating, I recommend that you negotiate in writing. And so this is the advice I gave to all of the pilot participants. And it really worked. On average, we saw them get 20% higher pay than their initial offer for that first job.
Awesome.
And then in the second job search, we also saw them increase their job offers by $10,000 to $20,000 just from doing that technique, making a reasoned argument, and then asking for it. That's a large amount of money compounded over many years of your career. And also take into account that the first salary that you make as a developer is going to give you an anchoring for all future salaries. And it's if you get a 10% raise from one point versus a 10% raise from 1.5 of that, it's a bigger jump, and it's going to compound over time.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm sorry, Joe. Can you put me back on track?
So we were talking about what happens at the end of Race.dev, and you were talking about people come back for their second job.
Yeah. So for the end, I think what the end criteria is more finishing a project and then deciding what you want to do next with Raise.dev. Is it do you want to begin your job search, or do you want to do another project? Maybe you get paired with a different coach. Maybe you work in collaboration with some other developers in the program as we start to try out collaboration things between developers. But then I look back to that example I was using with Couchsurfing. It's just because you go and you visit some place and you learn all about it and you enjoy it and you make a friend doesn't mean that you stop traveling, right? It's the same kind of idea. It's developers are always learning, and our mission is to help developers advance their careers, help every developer advance their career. And so that means that just because you've got that first job doesn't mean you can't be involved with Raise.dev. We can help you, learn a new skill, help you network and find the next opportunity, help you get some leadership skills by being a coach. I think there's a lot of different ways that you can stay involved for the long term. And my personal goal for the company is that Raise.dev is a developer's best friend, right? I want to get to the point where our company is really providing so much value to developers that they come to us and we can help them in all different aspects of their career. And it's almost going back to that point I made before. It's too good to be true. It's a no-brainer that being a member and participating in Raise.dev is so helpful to you that there's no reason you wouldn't do it. Right. So that's kind of the idea. So I don't think there's an end per se.
Nice.
Of course, people move on and do different things, but we're here to support whenever you need us.
Right. It's important that end comes at when you are ready and you are you're ready to move on. So there was actually a second part to this question that I want to circle back around on. So this person in particular asked about remote jobs, which I wanted to touch on because I know remote working is something that we're both very passionate about, but particularly you. So I was wondering a little bit if you could talk a little bit about your experience with remote working and how people can expect to see some of that emphasis on asynchronous and remote play out in Raise.dev.
So it's kind of interesting. When we started the pilot program, I actually had everybody in person, and I did that because I wanted to send them on site with the companies that they were working with. Pretty quickly, that became unsustainable, and we defaulted back to our ways of being remote. I have a long history of being a remote worker. My last job at GitHub, I was there almost 7 years. I worked fully remote that whole time. Prior to that, I was doing peer-to-peer university, which was also remote. And then prior to that, I was at Twilio, which was also remote. So I have, more than 10 years consecutive of remote working experience. And the thing that I found, there's a few core values when you're working remote. Having this distributed mindset rather than just here's the office, those are the people that are out of the office, where everybody's on equal footing all the time as a distributed workforce. The idea of working asynchronously so that as much as possible, time zones don't really get in the way. You have a system of writing things down, making things discoverable. And so all of these kind of, principles of doing remote work well are integrated into the way that we run the company, and they're also integrated into the way that developers work with coaches.
Sure.
I do think that there's no substitute for some FaceTime. So we do have FaceTime built into the program where you meet with your coach, you have kind of retrospectives, and you talk to them about what your goals and aspirations are. But then when it comes to actually doing the code and getting feedback, you should be working just as a normal dev, and then sending pull requests on GitHub on your repository and getting code review just like you would at work. So we try to make things mimic as close as possible to the real world experience.
Awesome. Cool, fantastic. So Karma asked questions. This is getting a little bit off the track, but this is an interesting one that I think will come back to some of the topics we touched on in terms of like where you get your starting point and how the coaches can help you. So we had a question from Karma Pup saying, would you say it's an easier language to learn or start with when starting out with dev work? Which I want to also take a little bit step back from and talk about. We're talking here about finding, like moving on in your career and finding your competitive advantage. Like how do you go about assessing those opportunities? And another angle of this that I'm very interested in, as someone who's far too online in the developer community, is how do you not get distracted by all the new things and know which of those are going to be worth learning and which aren't?
So I think the fundamental thing is, a language doesn't define your career as a developer.
Right.
I think knowing a few tools that are highly valuable, like having a few tools in your tool belt is useful. Being an expert in something is definitely handy, but I would really consider encouraging people not to just say like I want to become a React developer.
Right.
And I've seen this a lot with like the coding boot camps where it's I love the coding boot camps because they open doors for a lot of people. I know a lot of people who've started and done the coding boot camps. Even all of the pilot participants had done some sort of a coding boot camp in advance, so they knew how to code, but they still needed additional hands-on experience to get the jobs that they needed. But a lot of them will try to satisfy this desire of making the developer feel accomplished.
Right.
So like you want to sit down on day one, write some code, and have your thing do something, have your widget spin or whatever, and.
That was dangerous timing.
Yeah, you want to have it like actually work, and I think that's dangerous because what ends up happening is you teach these frameworks or you teach these like high level abstract tools that are like the flavor of the month or the year, and maybe they're not like the core thing that you use forever, and you don't get the underlying principles. And so a lot of the time what we're ending up doing, and again, like last night when I was doing this kickoff with the coach and the dev, we talked about this a lot, is we want to make sure that you understand what's happening behind the scenes, right? And having a fundamental understanding of what's going on is really important. So, when it comes to choosing a language, how can you choose a language? Well, there are a bunch of languages that are just kind of like the default, right? Like I think, as much as I hate to say it, but like JavaScript is like kind of the default language.
It's pretty much
that
unavoidable.
people are learning, especially if you're like web focused stuff. But you could learn all different languages, and I don't think the language choice is the most important part. I think what's important is knowing what your goal is and where you want to head. So, for example, if we talk in your kickoff session and you say that you want to work on data, I think it's pretty clear that you're going to want to learn Python and you're going to want to learn how to, do some kind of data processing. You'll probably want to learn some, pipelining tools and ETL tools and things like that. And that's just like kind of par for the course. If you want to do data, you need to know Python and you need to know how to do like ETL processing. And that's very different than if you want to be a web developer.
Yeah.
Like if you want to be a web developer, you probably need to learn JavaScript, some front-end frameworks. Sure. You probably need to learn, a back-end language that you prefer. I feel like I'm out of date. I'm a Ruby developer. I love Ruby. I think it's a great language for learning. If I was starting out today, would I learn it as my first thing? Maybe, maybe not. I kind of want to stay away from the like recommending based off of a language. I really would rather talk about your goal, and another thing to think about with your goal is kind of like the target companies that you would want to work for. So there's definitely like a group of companies that have set technology stacks. And if you want to be working, if like my dream job is to go work at XYZ company, like look at their tech stack, look at what tools they're using. Are they building things on top of things like Elasticsearch and different backend tools? Learn about those tools, right? So that's how I would do it. Was there a second part to that, Joe?
No, that you covered it perfectly. So I was answering a particularly big question that just came in. Thank you, Cyan Victory. No, that's perfect. And I liked your framing of it in terms of like looking at your end application rather than choosing a language and finding a use for it, which I think also kind of gets back to some of the things you were saying towards the beginning about programming actually being, applied problem solving, that like we should think of all of the languages and frameworks whenever available to us as tools that have particular uses, and it's down to like being comfortable enough to pick up the right tool at the right time.
And again, like going back to the just-in-time learning thing, there are certain jobs that need to be solved with certain tools and certain languages or certain frameworks. And as a developer, if you're on a team and your team needs to solve a problem, and the best way to solve that problem is using a tool you don't know, you need to learn it on the job.
Right.
And so what you really need to focus on is, how do I learn these things? How do I understand, and how do I look things up, and how do I find somebody who can tell me about this, right? Like my experience really leveling up as a developer, I've never really thought of myself as a great developer. I would say now
I feel like with that very deeply.
Now I feel like I'm confident. I would say I'm a good developer, but not that long ago, I didn't feel like even a good developer. Right. And one of the things that made me go from just like not feeling that secure as a developer and not thinking that I really had that much going for me to like feeling pretty confident that I'm like a good developer, not great. I'm definitely not a world-class developer. But the thing that made me feel like I was like pretty solid was doing a pair programming session with some coworkers, and the amount I learned there. And then the fact that I've since been able to go on and extract massive amounts of knowledge out of other developers by saying, I need to know how to learn how to do XYZ thing. You know how to do it. Spend 4 hours with me on a call, pair programming. And after that, like I can do everything myself.
I
like learn a ton, like just soak up the information. So I think that's the skill that you're like get into how to, determine what it is you need to learn and then how to learn it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, awesome. Cool. So we've got a rather large question. So I'll read it out verbatim because I think it's well put how it is. So if I'm understanding things correctly, this is more than only learning languages and how to code. I know how to code, but have trouble figuring out how to plan projects and take things from idea to implementation. Would this potentially be for me?
Absolutely. So I would say that we're not teaching people how to code. We're teaching people how to be great developers on teams. So the idea is that you can do a bunch of tutorials and you can write code, but until you ship that code into production where there are real users behind it, and until you're on a team that's doing code review of your projects, and until you are, actually in a situation where you need to, roll things out in production that, could have breaking consequences, you don't learn the kind of standard techniques that developers use every day in their jobs. So one technique that we used all the time at my last job was chat ops. And I had never seen chat ops in my life before that job. And so
would you mind explaining what it is?
What chat ops is basically this idea that, as a developer, you run lots of commands on your terminal. And when you run commands on your terminal, you get output and things happen. But what's bad about the terminal is, as an individual developer, the rest of your team can't see what's happening on your terminal. So, what looks a lot like a terminal? A chat room. It's literally exactly the same UI elements. It's like a text box with like a scroll back. Like you can input text and there's a scroll back. So there's this idea of like, why don't you use the chat room as your terminal instead? That way, whenever you type something in, everybody can see what command you wrote. Everybody knows who wrote the command, and everybody can see the output. And this was like a mind-blowing shift for me. And it makes things so much more efficient in teams. And when you're working on your own on a university project or a side project, you never even think about that because you're not in a situation where you need that. And so, we're emphasizing building the skills that you can't get from just, doing a tutorial or like learning, like trying to do like coding study. It's really do a real project with somebody from industry who has experience, who can show you best practices of how we do things in industry. And, maybe in the case of you're doing a personal project with a coach, you don't need chat ops, but because you're with Raise.dev, you're going to be deploying your stuff on ChatOps in our chat system, so everybody
Right.
else in the program can see you do it, and
Yeah.
you can get code review from other people in the program. And so there's all those kinds of things that are
Yeah, for sure.
and like ChatOps is just one, right?
Right.
Another is like how to do pair programming effectively, how to
Yeah,
do code reviews effectively.
Yeah.
Not only do you need to have your code reviewed, but you need to know how to review other people's code and what to look for.
Right.
And so you can get feedback on that as well.
Awesome. Cool. Hope that answers your question, Cyan Victory. The second one, I think, will be a quick one. We already touched on it briefly, but no problem answering questions again for people who have joined us later in the call. Thank you for joining us. Magic Blue asks, is there a cost to join? If so, how much?
Oh, great question.
It's a very easy one.
Yeah, Raise.dev is totally free during early access. In the future, there may be a charge. To be completely honest, I don't know if we're going to be charging developers or not. My goal with the way that we set up the program is to make it as accessible as possible. So when we did the pilot was actually a paid program. So developers were applying to be apprentices in the program, and we paid them for their time. That's not sustainable for us as a business model, unfortunately. So we're moving to a free model right now. And then in the future, we may charge, or we may have other sources of revenue. But I want to be completely direct about this. This is definitely a company. We are doing this from a kind of business-oriented angle, but I think that we can do that and be focused on providing the best opportunities possible as well. So accessibility is like my number one concern, and I want to make sure that we're not turning people away due to cost. So maybe there's in the future ways that other stakeholders in the program will pay money rather than the developers themselves. Maybe there'll be a modest fee for developers that shows commitment. Another model that I've kind of toyed around with and we're thinking about is as we start to bring on more hiring partners, that's companies that want to hire developers who've gone through our programs, there might be an opportunity for some revenue from them where the companies are effectively funding the program for the developers.
For sure, yeah. And this is, of course, the great thing about participating in an early access program and being an early adopter is your participation will help us find the answers to these questions, which is,
for sure.
is always exciting.
Yeah. I think also about the early access program, I just want to add a little bit. I really appreciate everybody that's coming and signing up, and we're dedicated to helping you advance your careers as much as we can. And I would ask that you share your feedback, share like the things that you want us to do. I think there's a lot of this that I'm seeing these questions come in and they're really interesting. And it's like, we can do that. Really what we want to do is be there for you as a developer. Like, what do you need to advance your career? I think we have some solid, points that we want to go over and solid points that we want to drive forward with you, like hands-on projects, real-world projects with coaches, code review, pair programming, testing. We have a bunch of different kind of concepts and topics that we want to focus on, but there might be something that you need help with that is not on our list. Feel free to ask. I think that we're going to, especially during the early access period, be willing to try as much as we can.
Cool. Awesome. I hope that answers your question, Magic Blue. So this next one is a little bit abstract, so this might take me a little bit to get to it, and I'm sorry if I asked the question not in the way that you wanted, Angel. But basically, Angel has shared an experience where he learned through one of the many resources, in this case Team Treehouse, and then later did engage in some other courses, and he was basically told he had to unlearn everything he had learned from that other resource. Sorry, I assumed he didn't mean to misgender you. I very apologize. Why do you think there is that? We spoke about boot camps a little bit earlier and different ways of learning. Why do you think there is that reaction from some developers that like, hey, some of these educational resources are of lower value or low utility, or they teach bad practices?
I mean, it's hard to answer in like a blanket statement, but my opinion on this is, there's the comical like Stack Overflow programmer that, you Google something, it shows up on Stack Overflow, you copy paste, and like your program is basically just a bunch of things you found on Stack Overflow. And I think that when you just like do tutorial-based programming, like that can happen where it's like everything, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So you like learn a new technique and you try to like apply it to everything, and it's really like useful for one particular thing. I mean, there's no wrong way to learn, right? Like if you like self-study, that's great. If you like, working with somebody, that's also fine. In terms of like putting things like lower, like I don't really necessarily agree with that. I don't think. I will say from a hiring manager perspective. So again, like taking this back to like the career angle.
Yeah.
As a hiring manager now, but also as a past hiring manager, I can say like pretty confidently that boot camp graduates, their resumes almost all look the same.
Right.
This is a major, major problem because if you're applying for a job, the thing that you want to do is you want to stand out. You want to be different. You want to be the perfect candidate for that role, not exactly the same as every other candidate.
Right. And why it's, I'm guessing that's just because the length of the program and what they cover on it is that same experience at that point.
It's partially a function of, they all have the same experience, right? Like they all did the same 3 modules. Right. They all did the same, more or less the same 3 projects.
Right.
But then they also have the career coaches at the boot camps that give them all the same advice. And the advice is your resume should start with your projects. They should be 1, 2, and 3. They should have a link to GitHub each one, and they should have a link to a live project on each one. Below that, you can have your past work experience, if you have any work experience in a particular industry. And then below that, you can have your formal education. And they all just look like super template-y, right? And seeing that as a hiring manager, it's almost a red flag to be like, this candidate is not experienced. And so what I try to say about like, I less say like unlearn the things you learned at boot camp, but more don't present yourself that way. Try to present yourself as the person for this particular job. And I know it's incredibly hard, right? Like one of the worst feelings is like needing a job and not having a job and being rejected over and over and over again. I know from personal experience, it sucks when you like have rent to pay and you have stuff to do. Like it's just not a good thing at all.
Yeah, but which is something you touch on in our announcement blog post as well. That there was, like times when you were applying for 30 jobs at a time and all of them.
I mean, it's just no good. But I think that the thing to do is try to make yourself a little bit more unique and try to, like I was saying, have your industry, alternative industry and development, match them together and present yourself in that way. And also go for jobs that are the match for that skill. So that 30 job hunt that I did was the last job I searched for. After that, every other job that I had was I applied for one job and I got it. Right. And this is the thing that's like really great about being a developer is once you like get your foot in the door and you have some experience, that's what happens, right? Mm-hmm. Like once you're proven, and it's not really fair that this is the way it is, but like people don't want to take risks. Hiring managers, they have, it's their job as well, and they have to like make sure that they don't screw up. And if they hire somebody that doesn't work out, that's bad on them. So it's a lot less risky. It's a lot more safe to hire somebody who's proven. And so once you're proven as a developer, you've got 1 or 2 years of experience, your job search is going to be much, much easier. And you can focus on optimizing for things that fit you better and things that pay better, rather than like getting a job at all, right? Like you'll have plenty of job opportunities. But for me, after that first really big job hunt, it was always apply for one job and get it. And it wasn't because I'm the best candidate in the world for everything. It's I only applied for the job that was exactly a match to my skills, right? So I kind of specialized in this niche of developer, education, and community. And when I found out that was a job, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. But the number of jobs that exist for that particular skill set is a lot smaller than the number of jobs that exist for developers in general. However, the number of qualified candidates is even smaller, and you can be very special. And so it's a lot easier to get hired that way. Sure. So this is like really far off of what you were originally asking.
No, it's great.
About like unlearning things. Like I didn't totally get the question about like unlearning.
Sorry, that's almost certainly my fault. But yeah, Angel, the original question asker jumped in and said that they've had that experience too. So I think we got there. So we are running a little bit close to time. We've got some other things to talk about what we've got going on for Hacktoberfest, which someone also asked about. So we've got 2 last questions I want us to get through. So we'll do this in a little bit of a speed round. So first of all, Nifty asked, how often do we get the pair program with our coach? Like how often do you meet your coach?
So I would set the expectation at you'll probably meet with your coach on a weekly basis in a real-time kind of synchronous method. So like video chat or something like that, video chat or audio. A lot of what we'll be doing is asynchronous. So you'll be working on things and then getting code review. And the way that the coaches are doing this is like being available ad hoc. So it's not just scheduled meeting times, but they're basically there waiting to help you whenever you need it. They might not respond within a minute, but usually they'll respond in the same couple of hours, same day.
Right.
and give you feedback that way. And then as needed, you'll have the ability to hop in for like a pair programming session. I think for the most part, though, the pair programming sessions will be prompted by the coach, in the sense that you're asking a specific question. It's really hard to explain it to you. Let's work on it together. And then they'll set a time and you do it. But I would expect that you're going to be seeing your coaches weekly, like synchronous, and then like maybe even more frequently that like on an ad hoc video basis, and then through chat and stuff consistently. In addition, with the coaches, there'll be the staff members that we have at Raise.dev will also be catching up with you and helping you out as well. So we have kind of a two-tiered approach. One is you have the main person in contact with from Raise.dev, and then you also have the coach on the platform who is helping you regularly.
Great, wonderful. And then a question from Wugrit. So we spoke earlier about that fact that like we look to have someone complete a project during their time with Raise.dev. What are those projects? What is the scope of those projects? Are they new projects made up by Dev and Coach? Are they open source projects? Like what's in scope for that?
So the projects come from three different places. One is if you're joining the program and you have a project idea that you'd like to work on, you're very welcome to do it. This is what we got going on with one of our pairs right now. And the coach will just help you work on that project. The way that the scoping works, though, is you have a goal, a mission of like what you're trying to accomplish, and we help you break it down kind of into a project management style. So this goes to the point of like, we're not just teaching you how to code, we're helping you think about the problem of like organizing your work, working with other people. And so it really comes down to sprints. Like, what are we doing this week? What are we trying to achieve? What do I need to learn to achieve this? What are the steps that are blocking me? And so the coach will help you break it down, give you resources, point you to things that you can learn about, read, and then also answer questions as you're stuck along the way. The second source of projects is open source. If you decide that you want to work on open source, we can definitely help you find a project in open source, which leads us into talk about Hacktoberfest a little bit. But we can get you doing that. And then the last is this idea of projects from our hiring partners, where if you say, I don't know what project I want to work on, and you also don't know what open source you want to work on, and you'd prefer to work on something that we tell you what to do. And I think that there's real value in both options, where you decide what you want to build and then you build it, and then also someone else tells you what to do and you build what they tell you. Because that's what a job is like, right? You don't necessarily get to choose what you're building. You just have to deliver the thing that your manager says to build or that your customer wants. And so if you choose to go that route, we can basically spec out projects for you that you can do. Some of those projects may be powered by hiring partners that need actual work done. I can't talk about any of the hiring partners right now, but we've got conversations with a few different companies going on around things like effectively like outsourcing some small low risk projects and using them as learning techniques to then also build a hiring pipeline. So as a dev in the future, when you join Raise.dev, you might be presented with an option to say like, here are 5 companies that want to hire from Raise.dev. Are any of these companies appealing to you? If so, your project will come from one of them, and you will work on that project with a coach, and then you'll be fast tracked into the candidate pipeline for them to hire you. And so really what I want to try to do up front is make it so that we're matching the dev to the company really, really early on, so that they can learn technology that's relevant to the company, cultural expectations that are relevant to the company, and industry stuff that's relevant to the company, so that they are the most qualified candidate for that job. That's not necessarily a requirement, but it's going to be an option in the future.
Right. Awesome. Cool. Rad. So yeah, as you said, that leads us into Hacktoberfest. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Hacktoberfest, October is a month-long celebration of open source run by DigitalOcean and the partners. And the idea is to help people contribute to open source and to get people involved and engaged with projects. And the big, I guess, like hook at the end of the rod is if you complete 4 pull requests, so if you make 4 contributions and they get accepted into the projects, you get a limited edition t-shirt that changes every year, which is super neat because you can kind of track when people did this through the years. So it's a really awesome time of year for anyone who's in software, especially when you're in open source, because it's always very exciting, all the new folks coming in. But one of the things that about Hacktoberfest is it can be quite scary if you're a new contributor, that you're walking into these projects that you don't know and that you haven't been involved with before, and you don't necessarily know the maintainers. And in the past, this has been largely offset by the community and the things the community are able to do. So both John and I have been to and have organized Hacktoberfest meetups where people come and they get help with the things they're working on. But obviously, as I'm sure you're all aware, this year is a bit special and different. And so we wanted to help kind of fill in that gap. So John, do you want to tell a little bit about what we've got going on for Hacktoberfest throughout the month?
Yeah, so this month we're hosting the Raise.dev Hacktoberfest Help Desk. So it's going to be a live stream similar to this, where we will be interviewing maintainers of open source projects, talking to them about getting into software development, bringing on developers from all different backgrounds and having interviews with them, and also, and most importantly, answering questions from the audience about real technology problems. Right. So what we'll be doing is, if you go to our website, raise.dev/Hacktoberfest, there's a button where you can submit a question. So if you're working on something in open source and you need help, just submit your question there, and it will go into our backlog of possible questions to answer on air. We're going to be choosing the questions that are most widely applicable, and also that we have the appropriate guests to help answer those questions. Yeah. And so we'll take those questions. We'll do a live stream. We'll probably do some pair programming on the stream, talking about how to get into open source, how to solve a particular issue, and really, this is to be a resource for developers. We just want to be a helping hand. So just come and check it out and ask any questions. Yeah. Also, during the live stream, we'll have chat going as well. So if you want to ask questions in the chat, you can always do that. And we can try to answer some of those. But the big thing is, all throughout the month, our coaches, developers, and maintainer guests are going to be helping real developers contribute to Hacktoberfest. I think we have a couple of cool games planned as well, where we'll do Issue Safari. I think Joe called it
Issue Safari.
Yeah, so we'll look around at issues on GitHub and talk about them. And then
the guest list is amazing. Some of the guests are watching.
We also might get into doing some Hacktoberfest contributions ourselves. So I've contributed to Hacktoberfest. I've completed the Hacktoberfest challenge.
Right.
Every year for the past, 5 years.
I haven't done it for
I definitely want to get the t-shirt again this year. So we'll find some projects we can contribute to, and I'll contribute. But yeah, it'll be really fun. So definitely come check that out. And we'll be streaming very frequently. The schedule's up on Twitch. It's in all different time zones. Again, accessibility is really important to us. We want to make sure that we're in time zones that work for you. So come check it out.
Yeah. So it'll be 4 p.m. So it'll be 3 times a day: 4 p.m. Indian Standard Time, 4 p.m. Central European Time, and 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. We will be putting the highlights up on YouTube after the show, and making sure that they are properly captured and everything for everyone to be able to view those. And we'll be varying things up throughout the month. So we've got different guests popping in and out. We do have some regular returning guests. So, for example, we've got the crew from Dev2 will be coming on, working on Forum, which is like the website. The application that powers Dev2. They are going to be coming on with some of the guests to work on that project as well, which is also open source, so you'll be able to follow along. The Twitch schedule only lets us do a week at a time, so the schedule through to the end of the week is currently up. As soon as it hits the weekend, I'll be putting the schedule up for next week as well. But we have special guests most days, and when we don't have special guests, we will be, as I said, we will have some fun. We'll be doing some different things. We'll be varying it up. So I'll stick that link on screen again. So you can find out more at Raise.dev Hacktoberfest. From there, you can subscribe to get notified when we go live. You can also ask a question. When you ask a question, we will let you know when that question is going to be answered live on air. And if you are not able to make it, we will make sure we get the link back to you afterwards. You'll be sent the link to the recording after your question has been answered. You can also, if you're interested, volunteer to be a special guest at the bottom of that site. There's a little form to fill out. We have been very fortunate that lots of people want to come on the show and help folks out. So do bear with us whilst we get through that backlog. And the second link that I'm putting on the screen is the schedule. So if you want to see the schedule thus far, you can go to twitch.tv/raisedevs/schedule. Tomorrow we're kicking off. We've got some great guests, and actually Friday, exciting enough, we've got a past participant from the program, from the pilot that John was talking about. So we've got Ching Ching coming on with us on Friday. So if you have any further questions for someone who's been through Raise.dev, you should also turn up Friday, and Ching Ching will answer some questions for you. So I think that is all we have for today. Thank you everyone who's joined us. This has been a fantastic way to kick this channel off. I've really enjoyed all the questions, and I hope this is John's first ever time on Twitch. So like
my first time live streaming.
Live streaming in general. Wow. Okay.
Oh, actually,
well,
no. I did live stream with CS50.
Okay.
We did that Git tutorial.
I remember that. Yeah.
But that was like totally different. I had like a studio set up. There was like lights all over me. This is way more like chill.
Making it work.
Yeah.
So yeah, we will be back tomorrow. I will be live with Vape Cigar, I think, tomorrow at 4 p.m. Indian Standard Time, 10 p.m. European Time, and far too early in the morning American Time. So join us then. If you can't find it on Twitch, we'll also be putting out some tweets with the schedule and with cards of who's going to be joining us. So thank you so much, John, for answering all of those questions. And
yeah, thank you. Thanks everybody for joining. It was a lot of fun. Thanks, Joe, for putting this together. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you join us on the stream in the future, and also go to raise.dev and sign up to meet your coach.
Yeah. Alrighty. Thank you so much, everyone. Catch you later.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thought my heart, after a winter so cold it left me frozen inside. You sang a song that unraveled me. The melody was enough to rewrite my story. There's no place I would rather be than in the light of your sun. It changes everything. There's no face I would rather see